The dream is to have a prosperous nation and a prosperous people who can be anything that they want to be within the confines of their ability. We need to have a Nigerian dream that will unite us instead of having separate interests that divide us. Yes, we may be culturally different and all that, but what is the Nigerian dream? A strong Nigeria where everybody has a voice, where everybody's voice is heard, where everybody can aspire to greatness and contribute their own quota to the realm of Nigeria, where we can be proud Nigerians and say we're men of integrity and we're men of stature and strength. That should be the Nigerian dream, a prosperous Nigeria with prosperous individuals who can aspire to become anything without knowing anybody by the force of their and the tenacity of their competence and their capabilities, where the nation provides an even playing field for everybody to contribute their own quota to the development of Nigeria and the African continent. That should be the Nigerian dream, which we all should probably pursue. And that might put an end to a lot of the little fracases that we're having amongst ourselves and trying to eat up and destroy ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for this very long session and for staying in tune. I'm beginning to think we may need to repeat it at some stage where we can have another conversation about Nigeria and then take as many of the questions that warm greetings and welcome to today's edition of the African Leadership Group, the Nigerian Leadership Series. My name is Itwa Igodalo, Itwa Olajide Akindele Ekekwa Igodalo. I'm happy to be president of the African Leadership Group, the Tri-Africa Foundation, and also your lead on today's edition of the Nigerian Leadership Series. We've been having this series now non-stop for about 5 years, coinciding with around June 2020 during COVID. It was just after we had the second edition that featured Pastor Agwiruku that my wife had just passed, and we had to go on and still have that edition at that time. So it's so fresh, it's so real. And I thank God for 5 years of unbroken transmission on this platform. I want to thank the back room, those who have helped, who have given wings to my sail, who have been there for me, who have supported me in spite of my inadequacies and in spite sometimes of my inabilities, and who have made me look tall and strong I salute in particular Pastor Sonny Enebi. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Olu Victor, thank you so much. God bless you. Olajumoke, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Akin Taylor, she's been so phenomenal. Thank you so much. I am grateful to you. And of course, my sister, thank you also very much for everything that you do and that you have done. It's been phenomenal, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the support. You know, it's just totally unbelievable that we've been able to come this far. I think the future is going to be truly great. I think we're going to be able to do some really great things in the future. I think we're getting our house right and our house in order. And I think that by God's grace, very soon there will be all sorts of things going on the platform. Of course, lest I forget, I also want to thank my brother. We've been friends since secondary school, Albert Name, who is also one of the key supporters and the wins in this whole process. I am truly grateful for everything that everyone has done. It's just been unbelievable. You know, Lara in particular, she just comes up with all these very inspiring things just when we're about to think, okay, so what next? And she's kept the background and the back office and the publicity going. Today, we want to speak on government policies. You know, Mrs. Fashidemi, of course, Shade, she was very strong also. She's on some kind of sabbatical, I think, right now, doing a few other things. But I glorify God for her name. So today we're going to be talking about a few things concerning Nigeria, the government policies and the impact on its citizens, the government policies and the impact on its citizens. And it's been almost 2 years, come May 29, 2025, of Bola Ahmed Tinubu's presidency. There have been all sorts of policies going on in all over the place. Only this last week, there was serious changes in the NNPC. You know, a bit of confusion there. I thought the NNPC had become a self-funding, self-managing PLC or something like that, but it looks as though government is still very actively involved. So we're going to be looking at the various government policies and the impact on its citizens. Maybe we want to look at very past policies and how far it has brought us. And we also want to look at very recent policies and how far it has brought us. Of course, Dr. Tope Fasua is here, and I want to welcome him very seriously. He's one of our lead speakers today, and he's the Senior Special Advisor to the Presidency on Economic Affairs. And if he's ready for us, I'm going to take him on straight away so that he can, in fact, give us a background, an idea, a sense of what the government policies of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration have been and what the plans are and which direction he believes that the government is going. And I think is the right fitting person to do this, being special advisor on economic affairs to the presidency. So my brother, Tope, you are most welcome.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for agreeing.
Thank you, Pastor.
Nigeria this time. And I'm going to leave the floor open to you to give us a bit of a snapshot of what the present policies have been and what you all are trying to achieve. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. It's good to be here, and thanks for the invite. Thanks also to my big brother, Sonny Enebi, for patching me through. It's good to be here, and basically I'll just run through some of the achievements and also the background to what we're trying to achieve. So essentially, I would say that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is very much interested in in kind of a new foundation laying for the economy. I think that's what actually drove these policies and our policies in government today. So essentially to lay a new foundation, of course, if you have a defective structure for the economy, like having a defective foundation for a house, is a lot of work. Sometimes it takes even more effort to be able to get it right than if you were building afresh and you had no issues. Mind you, the so-called defective structure for the economy, I'm not interested in the politics at this moment. I'm not going to comment about politics. But for the economy, is something that had been on for a while. We know about the petroleum subsidy, which came up sometimes in 1973, 74, when the Yom Kippur War happened. Nigeria joined OPEC, and all of a sudden the price of crude oil spiked. Before then, for almost 300 years, the price of crude was stuck at $3. However, it went up to $40. The world hadn't seen that before because the.
So you take the farm of everybody.
Sorry?
Huh?
Okay.
Please have the people mute their mics, please. Mute their mics. Tope, please go ahead.
So essentially, so it was then it got to $40. It was like a jackpot for Nigeria. And I think it was around that time that we felt, look, since this was a natural resource belonging to Nigeria, we needed to enjoy, get something to enjoy from being Nigerians. However, over time, it became unsustainable for obvious reasons. And in the year 2011, 2012, we saw this issue becoming a very hot potato issue. People rioted and all of that when the government of that time wanted to remove the subsidy. So Mr. President, of course, being an accountant and auditor, believes that, look, let him start on a clean slate. We don't want a scenario where, Nigeria will sell this crude and most of the money realized from crude will be taken away by so-called subsidies, including a lot of fraud that happened in that sector at that point in time. So Mr. President was interested in laying that foundation, hence the removal of subsidy on the day that he was sworn in. And of course, the other foundation was about Naira unification of the official and the black market rate of the Naira. As at that time, we had a scenario where the central bank would sell at 460 or thereabouts. 461 was the last rate. However, the market, which was accessible to everybody, would actually sell for 750, 800. And people could actually, if they had influence, collect money from central bank, offload in the black market, make the spread. A former central bank governor actually made an example of this, that a lot of people were making billions as a result. That said, but let's look at where the government has how it has affected people. We know that these two policies, because they're foundational and because they had effect. First of all, in driving up inflation, which peaked at about 34.8%. Before receding as a result of the rebasing. It's also ticked up a bit last month, but we hope that it'll this coming month it will start to go down again. So that it must be observed and must be admitted that the policies actually had an inflationary effect. But of course, the inflationary effect and the spike in cost of living was not only a Nigerian affair; it was actually a global affair. Everybody knows that there was a cost of living crisis in America, in Britain, and all of those places. And I think that from the perspective of an economist, I think that actually happened as a corollary or as a result of the shortings during COVID. I keep saying that sometimes some of these very cataclysmic events that are worldwide, nobody should expect to walk away from it in a year or two. Sometimes they take longer. Though Nigeria was one of the countries that managed to post a positive GDP, growth rate a few months, let's say about 6 months to 1 year after the COVID recession had happened. So essentially, there are many policies that have affected the people in a better way. For example, the the repositioning of the petroleum sector has actually opened up that sector. So whereas we can count that the increase in the price of petroleum to where it is today, I see that it has dropped again, maybe as a result of the reduction in the price globally. But we have Dangote refinery, which is basically benchmark today, and they're doing pretty well. They're also exporting abroad. Not only Dangote, I think one of the other modular refineries also export abroad as well, whether it was jet fuel or other products as well. We're hoping that the importation of petrol will actually gravitate towards zero. That's the target in this country, so that the refineries can compete. However, when I did a survey of the sector, the renaissance in that sector, and the coming on board of Port Harcourt, Warri, and a couple of other, modular refineries, I'm thinking about 300,000 new jobs have been created directly and indirectly. Not only those who are employed in those refineries, but those who provide services outside, those who are connected one way or the other. Also, one of the policies of the government that has impacted the people is the minimum wage, which has been increased from 30,000 to 70,000. Well, nobody is saying that it is adequate, but it is an agreement that the government has reached at that level. And of course, I'm in the vanguard lately of saying that please, whether you are in the private sector or the public sector, that is a law, and people shouldn't take the law for granted. I know for a fact that many companies, including medium-sized companies, have been able to recalibrate their invoices by charging more for what they produce. As of 2 years ago, they're charging more today. For viable businesses, at least businesses that are surviving, I'm saying that they should do better for their staff, especially by keeping to this. I interact a lot with the grassroots, and I know that quite a number of people still complain that they're being paid 30,000, 40,000 for a full work. It is against the law, because this 70,000 is actually what ordinarily we should pay interns, people who are living from their father's house, who are coming to work, people who are doing some, just trying to get into the work zone, as it were. So anyway, it's just an appeal that people can do better, companies can do better. And of course, even if there's any states that haven't started paying the minimum wage, of course, we all can put them under pressure. We will put pressure from the federal level, but also civil society and everybody, stakeholders, Pastor Itwa's platform, everybody can put them under pressure to do this, because indeed we acknowledge the fact that inflation has gone up 100%, 200% on some items like food in the last 2 years. And we understand that people cannot survive on that, but at least let us start paying this minimum wage. That said, another thing that has affected people positively, but there are several trainings going on. In fact, I understand that right now, the Ministry of Telecommunications and Digital Enterprises, they are doing what they call the 3MTT, 3 million technical talents. And right now, they're training a lot of youths on artificial intelligence, which is about preparing them. They are on their second phase, and they're training 300,000 people. They intend to train 300,000 people this time. They started. I don't know what numbers they have now, but they're doing some AI training. There's also the NEL Fund loan, which is assisting indigent students. When I checked the last time, they had disbursed 45 billion naira to about 525,000 students. I think that's positive. Paying their school fees, helping them with allowances, ensuring they get through school without dropping out. There's a credit corporation as well. Last time I checked, they've disbursed about 3.5 billion. I think they've done more than that, because this number is from October 2024. But this is actually, directed at where they started with civil servants. But Mr. President believes that a benign credit culture, okay, because there are also malignant ones, like some of those we see in some of the countries abroad, where someone just called me this afternoon complaining about, the burden of debt in some of the advanced countries that people go through, So, but a benign credit culture will not be a bad idea. About 3.5 billion has been disbursed to about 11,000 people, and 400,000 civil servants are being targeted. The entire fund in that credit corporation, which is headed by a young man called Uzoma Wamba, is about 100 billion naira. There's also a couple of days back, we launched the special agri processing zone, one in Calabar or Akwa Ibom, another in Kaduna. And that's supposed to help the agri sector. One of the things that have actually affected the citizens positively is the development in the agri sector. 108,000 hectares of new farmland has been cultivated for wheat alone, apart from other drives in that area also coming from the state governors. Now, one of the things that would actually affect the people very positively when we get through it very shortly is the tax bill, which intends to reduce the burden on very poor people, and make what we call a taxation, to make the taxes more progressive by ensuring that those who can pay are the ones that pay. Nigeria is a very rich country, it must be said. We're a rich country, we're not a poor country. Poverty does not define this country, but we also know that the economy is very informal, whereby a lot of people can decide not to show what they have or not to pay to government what is due to government, and which is also what is due to every Nigerian for collective development. So that tax bill actually has two very key provisions, which I'd like to highlight. Number one is that anyone earning 1 million and below, which is 83,000 naira per month and below, should not be taxed, not even 1 naira, not even 1 naira. So everybody on minimum wage should not be taxed. And also any business that turns over 50 million and below per annum, should not be taxed, whether it was VAT or company income tax. So that's a way of ensuring that we don't put the burden on the poorest people. But of course, for those who are top earners, recently we saw somebody's birthday, somebody gifting them 100 million naira, another gifting 50 million openly like that. Of course, they love the attention, but what it also means is that maybe a few people have access to a lot of money and making a lot of money. And I think that I always will say, without equivocation, that you see, there's no policy that is all good and no policy is all bad. Every policy has its winners and its losers. Even these policies in Nigeria today, some sectors are doing incredibly well. We've seen the profitability of banks go up. It's a problem in itself, but of course it can be handled. At least it's good we know the sectors that's making money. Real estate sector seems to be doing well. The real estate stock in this country has become noticeable in the last 10 years. The people are building fantastic places, new estates are developing and all of that. The landscape of the country itself is changing. The petroleum sector, especially the upstream sector, seem to be also doing pretty well, even though the price of crude oil dropped recently. But today I'm monitoring it. It got up to, I think it got up to $67 today, up from about $60 a few days back. So a few sectors are making money. I also would want to wager that commodity export sector is doing well. Cocoa did well in 2024. Cocoa was the best performing commodity product for 2024, did better than gold. But I think gold is now moving, gold has got to about $3,300 per ounce as we speak. But cocoa did incredibly well last year, putting money in the pockets of a lot of our people, especially in the rural area. I'm from Ondo State. I know that people from Idore and all of those places actually did very well last year as a result of the performance of cocoa, which is, we would actually claim it as a government, even though we may not have planted all of the seeds, or we may not be responsible for the spike in the prices, but we're also supporting the agri sector in our own way. The housing sector has also done well, and I'll be done in 2 minutes, Pastor, so I can allow other people to speak. There's a renewed housing scheme targeting 250,000 houses about. Right now, as I speak, about 15,000 houses being constructed. The one in Abuja is in opposite Kubwa, Karasana, I think it's called, about 3,200 houses. Almost all of them are almost being completed. And of course, we've seen spendings here and there, by citizens. which means that money is going in some direction. The CNG is also another achievement. A lot of drivers, about 100,000 drivers have been assisted one way or the other in installing the CNG, which means that they are off the petroleum grid. They've stopped paying, and most of them are commercial drivers who have stopped paying or buying petrol, and that's more money in their pockets. Even though we also noticed that many of them did not drop their fares for people. So it's what it is. So there's two more. There's the fact that infrastructure is being built. But Lagri Sokoto Road, Lagos Calabar Road, disbursements have been made, and the Lagos Calabar has even started not only from Lagos but also from Calabar, and that's jobs in the construction sector, which is also another sector that's doing well. And yes, Mr. President, like I said, is interested in laying foundation, and part of that laying of that foundation is the need to construct infrastructure to make sure that we're in a good place infrastructure-wise, and that is also job creation. As a result of this, we have seen, some of the, on the macroeconomic point perspective, we've seen an upgrade by Fitch, which is one of the rating agencies, which believe that, Nigeria is doing well. Yes, you may say, how does it affect the people? I think I've gone through how some of the positives on the people in my short presentation, but it means that the world believes that, look, Nigeria is onto something, and this kind of upgrade helps us with our investment drive. It ensures also that if Nigeria was ever going to borrow, going forward, we'll be getting a cheaper rates of interest. Nigeria has also, in the time President Tinubu has been around, we have recorded $16 billion of trade surplus, just on our trade alone with the rest of the world. So in about 6 quarters, we've recorded about $16 billion. And of course, we've also posted $6 billion in balance of payment surplus, meaning that one actually looks, for 2024, that one looks at, all the inflows into our current account and capital account, minus the outflows, meaning that we're heading somewhere. I was actually a bit scared about the scenario going forward, especially given the Trump, what we call Trumponomics, the fact that President Trump is trying to reposition American economy from his own perspective, hate him or love him. And that actually led to the decline in the price of petroleum. But like I said, that price is recovering fast. The stock markets that crashed have also started to recover. But anyway, that just tells us a snippet of the challenges that real leaders have to confront going forward. And I think that I believe that in the next 1 year, 2 years, what Nigerians are going to be seeing is more and more of the delivery of the goodies and result, better life, improved standard of living in Nigeria. It's not going to be everybody must be fed, because there's no country where there's not a few people that suffer. But we're very much interested in evening out income inequalities. We're very much interested in protecting the most vulnerable. And we're very much interested in improving productivity more than anything else. Productivity, not just to hand out money, but of course, there are people that are down on their luck who are maybe physically unfit and what have you. And of course, those kind of people, they need to get the handouts, even if it was food, even if it was money, they need to get something. But we don't want to make that the national policy. The national policy is Nigeria is a strong country. Our median, our mean, in fact, our mean average for the age in Nigeria is 16.9 years old, almost 17 years old is the average age in Nigeria, meaning that we are a strong country with a huge youth bulge, which we can capitalize on and ensure that the young people of this country are the ones in the reins and in the reins of control of this country, and they're the ones that will make this country great and even greater than it is right now. Thank you very much, Pastor, for the platform.
Thank you, Tope. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work that you all are doing, and so on and so forth. I'm going to be calling Mr. John Chukwu to chip in, but before I do that, there are some questions I would like to ask you, and if you want to make a note of them so that you can reply and then I'll take on Mr. John Chukwu, who is the founder of Carrier Asset Management and used to be MD of Guardian Express Trust Limited, now Spring Capital, and also a chartered accountant like myself, and so on and so forth. So I'll be calling him in a few minutes. But before I do that, I just wanted to take you up on some clarifications and give us some sense of direction. Number one, we would like to know what the policy on power is. You probably didn't quite mention that, and we would like to know what the situation is. Also, I take it, listen to you, we're trying to do 15,000 or something houses. What really is the deficit stock of houses in Nigeria? And how many houses do we need to try and build, and of what type, to make sure that there's some kind of housing for all in Nigeria? The reason why I say this is that government cannot do everything, but government can point us in the right direction and say to private people, we need 3 million houses in Nigeria, maybe 2 million in Sokoto, 1 million in Lagos, 10 million in Adamawa, 100,000 in Ekiti or wherever it is. If people can go in that direction and build all these houses, the government can sort of guarantee through a mortgage system or whatever system that if you can build them in this direction under this price, we will sort of almost take them off you and resell, or guarantee you that you will not be shortchanged. We will take off the surplus housing stock from you temporarily and then over time offload. I mean, if government encouraged people that way and there was master planning, then people would know where to invest. I would know that if I go and spend 100 million naira on building 20 or 30 houses that fits what government is thinking about, if I don't sell all of them, government may take the surplus from me, bank it, house like a housing bank, and then they can offload one way or the other. That might be a creative way of fast tracking our housing stock. The same, I didn't hear about our policy on food sustainability. You know, a lot of the time I say, if I was president of Nigeria, the first thing I would do is almost virtually ban food, or give everybody a year or 2 years to know what they're doing, and ban the importation of at least the basic foods that we eat, and insist that, you know, we must grow what we eat and eat what we grow, you know, and just drive people in that direction, because if we can be food sustainable, we'll save ourselves a lot of foreign exchange, and it will encourage people to grow. Also, you mentioned cocoa. I am on the board of Valency, a cocoa exporting company. We have two problems on that board. The first problem is that when we started business in Nigeria, the cocoa stock was about 2 million tons or something like that. In Ivory Coast, it was about 2.1 million tons. Today in Nigeria, it's still 2 million, 2.1. In Ivory Coast, it's almost 10 million tons that they harvest of cocoa, meaning that there's a consistent policy of replanting of this cocoa. I don't see any policy thrust. I don't see any direction. I don't see what the Aulo cocoa boards used to do that also guaranteed farmers that whatever they planted, the government will try and take it off them and resell. That really, really inspired agriculture, food sustainability, and export. I grew up on cocoa export. I grew up on coffee. I grew up on groundnuts, pyramids. I grew up on cotton. I grew up on palm kernel. I grew up on rubber plantations in Benin. All those things are still there. They're still available. What is missing is inspirational governance to try and drive people in that direction and create an atmosphere where private people can invest and they are guaranteed their return on investment to some extent. And of course, the Fulani herdsmen issue that has been ravaging a lot of our farms and things like that. So it would be nice to get your thinking on some of these things, and also if there's any areas where government needs support, support from the private sector, support from people like ourselves on ALG and myself personally, or whatever it is. It will be also nice to know what government is expecting of the citizens and in which direction government wants them to do. And then there's this issue of gas flaring and a policy on gas. I think there's a policy on gas. I don't know what this administration is doing about driving that policy and making sure that there's zero or minimum gas flaring in Nigeria. It's almost like throwing money into the toilet and so on and so forth. We need to look at that very seriously and how we can also get all our minerals out of the ground. All our minerals out of the ground. If we can do that, you'll increase productivity very, very significantly. And then there's a lot of Nigeria's money trapped abroad, that is not coming back to Nigeria. There's corruption money. I don't know what we're doing about that. There's a lot of housing stock that is being owned by Nigerians all over the place, and Nigerians in diaspora. How are we going to harness that energy to make them come back and reinvest in this country and add value to what we have? I have a policy on that, and I can discuss it with you off the record here so that I don't cause any controversies. But there are many things that can be done, to really, really fast track and activate the Nigerian economy. Let me stop there, lest I take away the thunder of the moment, and maybe have you respond to some of this. I must congratulate you, the government, though, on one or two things. The foreign exchange, you've been able to sort of stabilize it. And I'm sure my friend Yemi Cardoso has done phenomenally well in trying to balance the monetary policy and making sure that window of corruption that was there before has been closed, and so on and so forth. And there's stability a little bit in the banking sector. There's some kind of predictability, and the central bank is doing better central banking. I must congratulate Yemi Cardoso and the president on that. But there's so many other things that we can do. And of course, we haven't even scratched education. How do we ensure that the government is not spending so much on education, but getting the private sector to do more? We in King's College, for example, we're quite happy to take over our schools, and a lot of other people might be able to do that, so that the government does not need to spend so much on education, but just facilitate people to do that and get some kind of great educational policy where we're not also paying so much foreign exchange to educate our people. So let me give you a chance to just speak on these things, and then I'll then be going to Mr. John Chukwu to give us his own perspective. Tope, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pastor. That's a barrage of questions, but I'll try my best. So regarding power, I think the Minister of Power just basically gave some updates today in the ongoing interaction leveraging on Ministry of Information. From what I know about power, coming from the office of the minister, we've moved up from about 4.5 4,500 megawatts to 5,800 to 6,000 megawatts now. And then one of the policies they have adopted is the Band A policy, which actually increased the cost of power for middle class and upper class neighborhoods, and somehow been able to obtain some more money to manage the system. However, I also understand that the GENCO and the GENCOs and DISCOs being owed about 4 trillion, which needs to be resolved urgently. So that sector is always on tenterhooks, if you ask me, but a lot needs to be done. From one information I can actually surmise as well is that part of the problem is the lack of investment over decades. But I've seen several memos and to that effect, of that ministry investing a lot in trying to rejig the entire system. Of course, we use the national grid system, whereby it's a top-down approach, and oftentimes in that top-down approach, everything breaks down when anything goes wrong somewhere in the system. So it's a very technical area. I believe that, given the kind of investments they are making into repairing the grid, repairing different aspects, replacing a lot of components that have become damaged, rusty, defunct over time, perhaps we'll be able to get to that point where there'll be more availability. Of course, as has been agreed many instances, one of the ways that this burden will reduce on government is by captive energy, including using sustainable, alternative energy sources like solar, wind, biomass, and every other idea that's in the books. I personally believe that there needs to be a point as well where we have to help ourselves by going back to the basic and starting from the ground up. And I think that we need to, involve our students who in polytechnics and universities who can do experimental work at the very rural level. I've also shared that idea with the MD of the REA, Rural Electrification Agency, Abali, who's my friend as well, who thinks it's also a good idea to support what they're doing at the rural level. So if we can get power going at the rural level, through some of these experimental sources, which I think can be even driven by students who will be paid for their work, but who will also use that as experience to have something on their CV before they leave school, and which is also, I believe, in my opinion, should be done by group work rather than this lone wolf kind of projects that we do at that level. I think we may have impact on the rural level and then scale up, and then the government can, we can bother about the big cities and industrial areas. Gas is also something that has been deployed. I just discussed with the chairman of the Nigeria Gas Project this afternoon that even places like Dangote are being actually powered by gas fully. A lot of our industries are now being powered by gas. A lot has happened that has changed in that area. I think also maybe some of the ideas that we have discussed in terms of maybe the powering of Dangote, powering of industry. Maybe we need to also do a sort of adding together how many megawatts that comes to. Perhaps it will bump up our power generation as a country. But of course, many ideas are also welcome. Pastor, you asked about what the private sector can do. I think the government is very open to ideas. And of course, support coming from the private sector. And then, of course, you mentioned mass housing. And now, you mentioned what is the deficit. Well, at some point, some people said it was 17 million. Some people said it's 28 million. I think not. I align with former Minister of Power and Housing, Mr. Babajide Fashola, Babatunde Fashola, sorry, who was also a minister in that. Because the way I look at it is this: if Nigeria was 200 million people, and and 5 people can live in a house, okay, that means we probably need 40 million houses in Nigeria. Okay, how many houses do we have already? We have several millions. We probably have 20, 25 million houses, or even more than that, So if we want to build another 28 million houses, who's going to stay in there? As a matter of fact, one of the problems we've had over time is a scenario where some of the housing policies of time past have been a bit elitist. So if you come to Abuja, you see a lot of empty houses, usually very big houses, duplexes, and so on, abandoned, and a lot of estates that are luxury estates that have been abandoned midway. Some at times, when I looked at the survey some years back, I looked at it and this survey myself, it could be as many as 200,000 to 300 houses that have been abandoned in this town or more, including old houses where maybe the owner died and left and so on. So we guess the new approach of the government is to target mass housing. But I must take on board your suggestion of bringing the private sector, which I think may be a play. I haven't heard much about that. Indeed, That's the kind of thing we should do, like they did in the US, with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and so on, way back in the past, where the private sector can build houses and government can guarantee their sales. Government can also, by way of encouraging them to continue to produce. So the approach of government right now and the renewed hope that I mentioned, you see a lot of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, max 3-bedroom houses, meaning that the government approach and the thinking of the ministry now is to look at the lower end of the market, not 5-bedroom, 10-bedroom luxury house with swimming pools. That's not what we need now. So government can do that. I think if I'll find audience with the Minister of Housing and ask about this private sector. So I think I would put our deficit at around maybe 5 million houses. If we had 5 million houses all around this country spread well, I think a lot of people will be much more comfortable. Of course, the mortgage is also a factor, and that's also one of the things that Mr. President is driving with his discussion about consumer credit. So that because Nigeria is one place where people build houses from the ground up to the roofing and the painting without borrowing from anywhere. Elsewhere abroad, it takes 30 years, 25 years to finish paying your mortgage. You mentioned, so we would be able to use that private sector model. You mentioned food sustainability. As a matter of fact, food sustainability, sovereignty, security. One of the problems we have, and that's where the issue of security comes. And I want to wager something which you get people thinking. Nigeria was amalgamated by the colonialists from south to north in the same way as countries like Ghana, Benin Republic, Togo, Cameroon were amalgamated. In the north of Cameroon,
Can you hear him, or is it my system?
It's frozen.
It's frozen.
I think it's frozen, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. You were frozen for a minute there, Tom. Okay,
okay.
you're back up.
Yes, thank you. So I was saying that Nigeria was amalgamated just the same way as countries like Benin Republic, Ghana, and all of that. In the north of Ghana, you have Hausa people. In the south, you have the Gad, the Twi's, and all of those. So why Nigeria? Why is Nigeria always targeted with all of this terrorism and all of this, usually which we never even knew in the 80s and 90s, apart from things like Matasine that came and left, So we have a problem here, so which affects our food because 75% of the landmass of Nigeria is in the north of Nigeria. Most of that land in the north is arable, meaning they're very good for growing crops. And that's why the north still remains our agric powerhouse as we speak today. However, one thing happened in 2024 as a result of the decline in the value of the Naira. A lot of our food products were bought over the border by many of our neighbors because all of a sudden the CFA that they used became a lot stronger than the Naira. However, right now as I speak to you, I think there's talk about the devaluation of the CFA, which I think if the CFA would devalue as well, we would have a bit of reprieve. But all hands are on deck in terms of food sustainability, in terms of increasing production, in terms of better seedlings, in terms of reducing post-harvest losses, and all works in that ministry. I think it's one of our active ministries. A lot more can be done. The biggest room in the world is room for improvement, but a lot is being done in that area. You mentioned the state policies surrounding cocoa. State policies, I understand that even during the time of Fashola, governor of Osun State, or the state of Osun, as he used to call it, about 5 million new cocoa seedlings were planted. Of course, it takes time for that to come on board and to be harvested and deployed, as it were. It still takes a bit of time. Equally, in Ondo State, the same thing has happened. We see a lot more production going on in the Cross River area because Cross River and even Enugu, they're also kind of cocoa producers as well. As you know more about cocoa, the government is not particularly involved at the federal level, must be said. Maybe apart from policy and easing the exportation of cocoa. However, what the government has done at the federal level is also to encourage the processing of cocoa rather than the export of mere beans in order for us to get more. You mentioned what has happened with Cote d'Ivoire. Honestly, what Cote d'Ivoire has been able to achieve is phenomenal because Nigeria, unfortunately, has dropped to number 5 or 6 in the world in terms of cocoa beans production over time, when we were almost at par with Cote d'Ivoire at some point in time. We need to study what the Cote d'Ivoire people have done. I think I want to put that back to the region that was built by cocoa, which is the Southwest region, was built by cocoa. One thing I want to quickly add is that just this afternoon, I was discussing with someone on this issue of cocoa and the fact that maybe we become very externalized. I remember up to 1985, 86, when in fact the cocoa boards were dismantled because they were deemed to be inefficient. A lot of our fathers in the Southwest actually built their houses on the back of cocoa. However, the point was also that they didn't have any cost to send money anywhere else after selling cocoa, but to invest in their own abode. And that was when a lot of the upstairs building, what they call petes in the Southwest, were built. I was somewhere in Ife and I saw a whole lot of that recently, about sometime last year. But these days, we don't even know where the cocoa money goes, as much as a lot gets sold every year. And of course, unfortunately, most people prefer to use the money to buy things abroad or to relocate abroad, as the case may be. So there's a problem there, which you may be able to assist us to continue to educate the public and also for us to get grounded in this. We don't have a board anymore for cocoa. And it is this government's policy, as stated by Mr. President, that he's not looking at that area. He wants the market forces to be able to take hold, given and granted. So we have to work within the policy of government that we have on ground. You mentioned solid minerals, and I'm almost done. You mentioned corruption money. Well, that's the work of EFCC. I can't comment much on that now, sir. Solid minerals, there's a new vista being opened by Mr. Dele Alake. Hopefully, we begin to get results pretty soon. There are new areas being developed in that. But again, a lot of what you mentioned actually goes back to the government, state government, because the state governments own the land. The federal government owns very little land, so a lot depends on them. And I must say that, however, as a result of the policy of Mr. President, there's a whole lot more money being released to the state. About 1.5 trillion got shared at FAC a couple of days back. And, the level is now around 1.7 trillion constantly every year, every month, which goes to the state. We're Naira rich now, okay? We not dollar rich, if you look at it in terms of dollar, but we're Naira rich. And we want to be able to ensure that the Naira, of course, being our sovereign currency, goes as far as it can go. You mentioned gas flaring. China and Japan. And one of the areas they're looking at is glass flaring. The person I spoke with just before starting this meeting is Professor Ibrahim, who is the chairman of the Nigeria Gas Project. And there's a lot of opportunities in that area to capture gas and to be able to make that gas very, very useful. So lastly, you mentioned Nigerians in diaspora, what they can do for us. The first thing that comes to mind is that we had a very successful Dirty December last December, and not only from Nigerians in diaspora, we saw a lot of Americans coming over to Nigeria, coming to feel the vibe, what's going on in this country. There's that energy around Nigerians and everywhere they go. We in government are also trying to see that this traffic flow from Americans, South Africans, Ghanaians, other blacks everywhere, white people everywhere. It's always summer in Nigeria. The weather is fantastic. The food is amazing. The people are beautiful and, energetic and friendly. We want to ensure it's an all-year-round effect. And so I personally have written to the Minister of Tourism to say, you know what, we need also, apart from Dirty December, or let's call it Destination December, if you don't like the word dirty. But we also want to do something like a sizzling summer, because in fact, people travel more in summer than in December. December is short, but the summer is where you have family holidays. As much as they go to Portugal and Greece and all the places where there's sun, they should be able to come to Nigeria as well. Again, to round up, we need your assistance. I personally, being my first time in government, I've realized that, look, a country evolves on the back of the interaction, suggestions, hard work, cooperation, unity of every stakeholder in the country, not only those in government, those who are outside government, opposition parties that criticize constructively, I should say, criticize, sometimes in a very acerbic tone, but of course, constructively, activists who put the government on its toes, and down the line, it's everybody's work where a country eventually ends up. Nigeria is only 65 years old, less than 65 years old. We should condemn Nigeria less, because as countries stand, maybe we're still a teenager, and there's so much more to achieve upfront than what we have achieved in the past. So again, I thank you for the platform, and I think I want to leave on that positive note that there's great hope for this country. Mr. President is also a great leader who doesn't have elections in mind, but is thinking of 20 years down the line, 15 years down the line, medium to long term, 50 years down the line. It would have been said that at least there was a president that came and tried to set things right, and also to repair the foundation, the damaged, indeed, economic foundation. I'm not interested in the politics at this moment of this country. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Tope, Mr. Fasua. Thanks a lot. Somebody said I was pandering to government. I don't know where they came up with that, but we needed to ask some hard questions, and we also need to find out what is going on and see how we can also add value. I think there's one or two other things we can look at, but I'm going to yield the floor to Mr. Chukwu right now to give us his the opinion of how the citizens are looking at these various government policies, where the shoe is still pinching and hurting, what citizens would really want government to do. And I hope Mr. Fashola will still be staying on so that he can get some of this feedback, and then we can take it from there. You know, the policy on infrastructure is still very critical. A lot of people are saying, why are we investing on a coastal road when even the main arterial roads are still not functioning well? Almost impossible. Challenging to get from Ijebu to Benin, and so on and so forth. Shouldn't we have fixed those roads first and sorted them out before we start this big investment in this and that and the other? Or at the minimum, do it pari passu, do it parallel, and so on and so forth. But Mr. Chukwu, thank you for coming, and let's listen to what your thoughts are.
Thank you, Pastor Itua, and thank you, Dr. Tukurua Fashola. And I also want to thank Faye Ransom, who actually brought me to the program. The last time I was on this program, unfortunately, Pastor Itua, you were not available. You were busy with other national assignments. It's actually, for me, a difficult thing to speak after Tope has spoken, because Tope is in government, and Tope probably has more information than I do because he's in government. And in fact, as I was listening to him and also looking at the comments on the chat box, I was almost regretting that I should have accepted to speak after he has spoken, because whatever I'm going to speak will be as if I came to contradict him or to negate or subtract from the very cheering news he has shared with us. But if you just go, and I'm happy, Pastor Itua, you have done that. You're also looking at the comment box, because when you picked up the comment that the person made reference to you as the anchor, it still showed me that you have seen all the comments. If you take a cursory look at the comments, it speaks volumes. It then means from the comments you've seen on the chat box, for those who have access to the chat box, you can see there's a direct disconnect between what the government think the people are feeling and what the people are feeling. I want to believe that people in this meeting or in this webinar are the people of Nigeria. So, and they are speaking their mind from the comments they are making in the chat box. So the key thing is that, which is basically for me, providing information to Tope Fashola is to take it back to government. There is still misalignment between what the government's objectives are and what the people think the government should be doing for them. If you look at the macroeconomic variables, you fresh leaves that are coming to counterbalancing forces. The vulnerabilities of the economy make it difficult for us to realize some of the things we seem to be seeing. I'll give a live example. When Tope spoke, he talked about the inflation rates. He said the inflation peaked at 34.8% last year, December last year, and the food inflation was in the region of 39%. And then this year, we are now dealing with inflation rates that started at 24.48%, dropped to 23.18%, and went back to 24.23% in March. That is the first 3 months of this year, which was ordinarily, if you look at those figures, you will see how inflation has moderated. But that takes away the fact that even if you take out the 24.123% we had in March, bear in mind that that was computed based on a new base, a rebased inflation figure. And that new base was an increased price level at 33.18%. So if you take a 33.18%, which is the average level that the prices increased in 2024, and you add 24.23%, you are now dealing with in the region of 57% increase in the average prices over the past 15 months. So an average household whose income has not increased by 57 to 58% will see a worsening of their standard of living, even in the current lower inflation figures. And because we are using a new base that masks to some extent the increases that we're feeling, which takes us to the issue of where is the shoe pinching us. I looked at the chat box, and I could actually identify the feeling, which I feel, which I think you don't need to be an economist that live in this country to feel it. One is that we're still dealing with a very high rate of inflation that is far above the income level of average Nigerians, or the increase in the income level of average Nigerians. Two, we are dealing with a higher food inflation figure. Three, I don't want to go into the issue of insecurity because that's actually not my purview, but you can't divorce it from the problem we're having, which Tope spoke about. He talked about the insecurity that has actually led to the deterioration in the food security in the country. And he was asking why that other countries were amalgamated the way we are amalgamated, and why is it not happening here? It's happening in those other countries. The reality is that, well, as the blame cannot be fully heaped on the food steps or the doorsteps of the current government, but government is a continuum. Over the years, we've seen poor governance that has effectively worsened the standard of living of Nigerians, pushed a lot of people into abject poverty. And what goes with abject poverty and hopelessness is that you are going to see a spike in insecurity. People live because they hope that the next day is going to be better than today. If they begin to imagine that the next day is going to be worse than today, then you're going to see increase in suicide rate. You're going to see increase in unethical behavior because they no longer have anything to look for. And that's the situation that a lot of Nigerians have gotten to, that they are not seeing. I mean, every day you hear people trying to commit suicide on Third Mainland Bridge. You are seeing mass murders in Benue and Plateau, and this thing has overwhelmed the security system because there's no security system that has a capacity to contend with a dejected population. So in as much as I'm not heaping the blame on the doorsteps of the current government, it is still the responsibility of the current government to do whatever it can to reduce that level of insecurity and allow people in the farming base of this country, the North Central, the core of our food production comes from the North Central. Then if you have an improvement in food production in North Central, and then you look at the Northeast and the Northwest, these are the food baskets or the food production zones of this country. We need to do something quickly to address the level of insecurity. And that's what we give out food security. Without that, we cannot rely, given our population, on food imports. Then looking at the other macroeconomic variables, probably what I'll just do is look at what the government has done, which is what Tope spoke on. The government came in, introduced some reforms. Many of us had actually cried ourselves hawks on the need for reforms in our FX management, the reforms in the petroleum industry, which the government boldly did. And that brought some level of unintended consequences, heightened level of food inflation, heightened level of all item inflation, deterioration in standard of living, depreciation of local currency. So were they necessary and absolutely necessary policy decision the government should have taken? Yes, nobody can dispute that. I understand. Did they pain? Did we expect any pain? Yes. But the question is that, could we have done it in another way that would have reduced the pain? And I've been on national TV and I've said this multiple times, that it was a necessary operation, but it could have done it in a way that could have reduced the fatalities. And I have used examples of a woman who is going to go into labor. If you have gone to your antenatal or whatever they call it, and they are due for labor, the doctors will make sure you're going to make sure they have your blood type, they have somebody who can take care of the child in case the child is born with some complications. And these things are put in place before you go into labor. If the labor becomes complicated, they will do a CS. They're not going to be at that point say, is your blood group A+ and all those things. And I felt we could have done those reforms in a more structured and not the cavalier approach we used to do it, which created as if we're not prepared for the possible fallout. And that became difficult to manage. So that's by the way, but what I'm just saying that the government did the right thing, but obviously the way they did it could have been done better. They could have done better in the way they did it. So, but that is now past. So what we're now doing is what you may call the recovery process. We are going through a recovery process, and the first quarter of this year showed some signs of recovery, which I say we saw sprouts in the first quarter of this year. I'll give you instances. I talked about the inflation rate that dropped, but we must treat that drop with some level of circumspect that we are now calculating inflation based on a higher base. Then you saw exchange rate stability. And I can give you specific figures. At the beginning of this year, the parallel market rate was 1,670 naira per dollar. By the end of March, it had dropped to 1,536 naira, 38 naira per dollar at the end of March. Similarly, the official window opened the year at 1,538 naira to a dollar, dropped to 1,536 naira, a drop of about 2 naira at the end of March. But unfortunately, because the vulnerability we have not been addressed, which has been alluded in this conversation, vulnerabilities in terms of our crude oil production, vulnerabilities in terms of our foreign exchange reserve, vulnerabilities in terms of food production, and then you saw immediately Trump announced his Liberation Day on April 2nd. We saw all the variables move southwards, which shows that in as much as we're trying to restructure the economy, some of the heavy liftings need to be done, have not been done. I'll give you an instance. Crude oil production got as high as 1,540,000 barrels a day in March. In January, 1.54 million barrels a day in January. In February, it dropped to 1.47 million barrels a day. In March, it dropped further to 1.4 million barrels a day. Those are concerns where you see we jump up, we celebrate, and we see a declining trend, which means the structures that sustain is a forward or northward consistent trajectory is still not there. We talked about the exchange rate that appreciated up to March. The Liberation Day announcement of tariffs on all countries saw our exchange rate immediately drop. In terms of reserve had actually peaked about $40 billion. And then we have seen a consistent drop in reserve. It had dropped, as the last time I checked, on the 11th of April, it had dropped $38 billion just in a matter of a few days. And those are the reasons why I say, look, the government has done a couple of things which we must commend them, which is why I said I didn't want to speak as if I want to subtract from the positives. But there are still a lot of work to be done. The issue of improving agricultural production, starting from the low-hanging food, I can call it the low-hanging food, but the basic, the minimum basic, which is addressing security. It's only when we are addressing security, we talk of other things we need to do, irrigation, land use act, and all those, reform of land system, land management system, and all those things. But you must start from the basic, which is address the issue of insecurity. Secondly, address the issue of crude production. You cannot continue to see a decline in crude production, because then thirdly, which is going to be a medium-term thing, but the foundation must be laid today, create an economy that is productive. To create an economy that is productive, we must address the issue of power supply. I've seen comments on the issue of power supply. We must go back and address the structure of ownership of the power sectors, and as well as government role in that sector, including the structure of our transmission grid, which is address the issue of basic infrastructure, transport, road transport infrastructure, rail transport infrastructure, and then logistic infrastructure, the seaport, the time it takes to bring goods into the seaport and take goods out of the seaport, and the time it takes to ship goods out of the seaport. We need to address those today before we now go to the issue of sectorial support that the government needs to do. What do we need to do to incentivize sectors of the economy that both strong growth opportunity? And I close with a comment on what's going on based on the Donald Trump's tariff imposition across the board. Of course, he has suspended about 90 days, but bear in mind that Donald Trump imposed a import tariff on Nigeria of 14%. He imposed import tariff of 27% on India and imposed 47% on Vietnam, because Vietnam, a lot of offshoring activities happened from US to Vietnam. For those who travel outside the country, if you go to any shop in the US or even in England, you'll find out that the Nike clothes, the shoes you wear, buy, most of the things you wear in America and buy in America are produced now in Vietnam. So America is suffering a negative balance of trade with Vietnam, and therefore imposed a 47% tariff on Vietnam based on the tariff they claim that Vietnam imposed on them, and imposed 27% tariff on India. What happened next? Light manufacturing companies began to plan to migrate to India so that they will pay only duty of 26 to 27% to export goods to America. Also bear in mind that Nigeria's tariff was only, in case he decides to not fully implement, it was only 14%. So why are companies not considering coming to Nigeria to set up? Because we are yet to build the basic supporting infrastructure that will make us a cost-effective producer so that people can come here and produce. And it's only when we do that that the vulnerabilities of the economy will begin to moderate, and we will build an economy that is enduring. It is the government that is at commanding height of doing that. You and I can speak all the grammar in the world. I cannot mobilize resources to build a standard gauge rail unless if the government decides to create a policy that will say, look, go Johnson Chukwu. Sorry, Pastor, I also need to correct. You lost the son in my name. It's Johnson, not John. There's a portion of it that you lost, so I'm bringing it back, sir. So, but that's on a lighter note. So it is the government that will direct the private sector to focus on some sectors, some critical issues that will drive economic growth, enduring economic growth. And that's why we're putting it back on the doorstep of the government. There is a limit to what private sectors can do without government incentive. At the minimum, favorable government policy that will drive it. I can take questions or areas to speak on.
Okay, we didn't get you. You went off a bit there.
Okay, well, I concluded by saying that while we are bringing, while I'm trying to play the devil's advocate or bring the issues that Tope has presented as rosy, is that it is the government that will drive its consistent economic development. It's either through government policies, government incentives, or at the minimum government support. That there is a limit to what private sector investors can do without necessary government policy direction or without government favorable policy environment. and nobody can go and start, no matter how rich you are, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to build a highway from maybe from Benin through Auchi to the north. If the government does not give you a right of way concession, no matter how rich you are. So the government has a lot to do to support the infrastructure build, not necessarily to build it from budgetary allocation, to support the infrastructure build, to create an environment that will incentivize private sector investors to invest in the economy and create opportunity for sectors where we have comparative advantage. It is government policy that made Nigeria to be a net exporter of cement. It didn't happen by accident. It was a deliberate government policy by the Obasanjo government to encourage cement production. Similar policies can also be implemented in several other sectors of the Nigerian economy where we have relative competitive advantage to produce more cost efficiently. But it's having stable power supply at relative cheap cost. It's a simple known for you to be a productive economy, and it's the government that would need to drive that.
Okay, thank you very much, Johnson. Okay, I think I got it right now. Johnson, the son of John. Johnson. Yeah, thank you. We're going to be opening the floor for questions now, and I'm sure there will be a few of them, different people wanting questions. I'm looking at the chat. Some people is saying that we need to talk a bit more about nepotism. That some infrastructure, Apapa Port, Sinkan Port, were given to a group without any competitive bidding. We need to talk about corruption. There's still a lot of accusation of corruption in the government. We don't know what the government is doing about it, and that is a negative flyer for whatever policy the government is doing. Again, the clear direction in which government is taking us, we're not sure where we're going to land by 2027 or what is exactly going to happen and what's going to be the dividends of this democracy to our people, and that a little too late or a little too slow, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if Tope is still on the platform or if Johnson wants to take a stab at this one as to exactly what is going on and so on and so forth. So if you have your question, please raise up your hand electronically and let's see what they have. I see my sister, Auntie Yemisi is there, Professor Nike Grange, Olalere Baba Shola, and also Funke Awolowo. Please take your questions one by one. Let us know who you are directing your question to, either Dr. Fasua or Mr. Chuku, and then I'll have Pastor Fani take it on from here. Thank you very much, everyone. God bless you all.
Okay, Pastor, I think Tope may be in government may be the best to answer the issue of corruption, but I know that from a private sector perspective, there is still a high level of corruption perception by Nigerian business operators. I run a company called Carrier Asset Management Limited. We also have a Carrier Finance Limited, which is a finance company, so we do lending. We took a decision as a people, as a company, that we will never lend to anybody who is in business with government. This afternoon, one of my directors approached a branch in Abuja and requested that he would guarantee a loan to be given to somebody who is going to do a contract for a government agency. And I had to call him privately and say, sir, I'm sorry, we are not going to do that against our policy. We're not going to lend to anybody that has to do with government. You lend to somebody who is bringing a contract for a government, the person finishes the contract, and somebody asks him for 30%, 40% cut before the payment is made. And that is a norm. It has become normalized. So from my own experience, we are not going to do business with anybody that has to do with providing service to government. We're not going to part with money to anybody who's giving into the government. So that's the level of how badly corruption is perceived in government. On the issue of infrastructure, which somebody asks about the coastal road. Coastal road is important, it's relevant, but probably from my own personal perspective, I would have started with the little things, the more critical things, and then I moved to humongous projects. The coastal road is going to take you from Lagos to Calabar. On the edges of the country. Nigerians commute in the hinterland. To drive from here to from Lagos to Benin is a difficult thing. From Benin to Asaba is difficult. Then from Benin to Auchi is a nightmare. If I were in government, I would have started with those existing arterial roads. And then when we finish them, we will now move on to the nice to have. And that's what I call it, nice to have. Because you ask yourself, today, there is no dual carriage road that runs from Lagos to Abuja. These are the two major arterial cities in this country. There should be. I should be able to wake up in the morning in Lagos by 6 a.m., enter a highway, a 7-lane both sides, and then drive to Abuja, the federal capital. And that should also be a road that links you highway from Abuja to Kaduna and a highway from Abuja to maybe Port Harcourt. Those are the necessary minimum that we should start with. And these roads already traverse existing urban areas. If you are driving from Lagos to Asaba or to Onitsha, you're going to go through Bini, go through Abo, go through Asaba, go through Onitsha, go through Owerri, go through to Aba or Calabar or whatever. And those are existing place of huge conurbation. But the coastal road they've started, so we can't question the wisdom of government. Probably, like I said when I started, being in government, Tope clearly should have more information than I have. Maybe there are benefits that I am seeing from a layman's, I'm not seeing from a layman's perspective that he or the government people are seeing from government perspective. So two things I've touched on. The corruption perception is still very high, extremely high, but the government people may be able to give us some level assurance that it's just our illusion, and I use the word illusion. But I, to protect my business, said we're not going to lend to anybody who is providing service to government, because we're not going to compromise to the point that somebody has to part with principal amount lent so that somebody can approve the payment of executed contract. So that's for me at the personal level. And the opinion I expressed on the highway, like I said, it's going to be beautiful when they finish it. But I would have started, if I were to make that decision, from the smaller and more critical issues before I go to the fancy things.
Thank you very much. Can I chip in?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Yeah, so I think about those two specific issues you have commented about, let me also chip in my own perspective. The first thing about oh my God, okay. The first thing about the Lagos Calabar, highway. I think the thing is that that this government took the initiative of starting something called the Blue Economy, the Ministry for Blue Economy. Nigeria has about the last time I checked, about 7,000 kilometers, if I'm not wrong, of coastal line. Or is it 800 kilometers? I can't remember, but something of that sort. From Lagos down to Akwa Ibom, we have the coastal line, which we haven't actually developed over time. The blue economy is anything that has to do with the sea. Honestly, I went to Morocco some years back and I saw what is possible with their 400 plus kilometers of coastal line, what they've done in Morocco. Everywhere is a resort. So the idea behind that, remember I said that Mr. President is, more interested in very fundamental things and big transactions as well that can reposition this economy. So that is the whole idea, to open up all of those states in the coast, link them up together. Like I said, they started from Calabar, they started from Lagos. And I want to believe that as they complete sections, they will open them up, but thereby opening up those economies. Hopefully, we'll get to a point where, like you see, Miami and other places, hotels will spring up, resorts will spring up, new economies will spring up. And there are also feeder roads from that coastal road into the hinterland. It's about totally reinventing all of those places, and I think about 7 to 8 states are going to be touched. Indeed, the whole of Nigeria. Now, they also remember there's also the Sokoto to Badagry, which will connect the Benin and all those places that Mr. Johnson mentioned. Also, a similar road of that magnitude and that capacity as well. So it's not just about Lagos to Calabar. Of course, it's about diversifying the economy, opening up a new section of the economy. We haven't done too much in terms of the blue economy over time. In fact, even in terms of financing, there's financing that's directed at blue economy, at green economy, specifically, which we need to tap into as a result of this new thinking. In terms of corruption, yeah, well, I can only speak for myself. But the truth is also to note that it is Nigerians that are in all those places. Some of those Nigerians that are asking for those amounts will also come forward and blame the same government. Some of them will even cost Nigeria. That's what's very interesting. Some people lost 1.3 trillion in Ibadan and environment recently because they wanted to double their money, or maybe they believe. I mean, there's been so many scams run in this country by usually Nigerians involved. So, well, I don't want to believe there's anything wrong with our stars. I don't believe there's anything wrong with us, but culturally, there's a problem, which also mirrors in terms of government corruption or corruption that we see in government. Equally, like Mr. Johnson said, even the private sector itself is corrupt. But let's look at it this way, that there's a problem that mirrors from a cultural perspective. Every Nigeria wants to blow. So the people who lost 1.3 trillion to one scam in Ibadan would also say that, look, they didn't have money until they lost the money because they wanted to double the money quickly. Now, so it goes to all our culture, including maybe our Owambe culture, the way we spend, which now we're beginning to mirror and see side by side with the white people whose economy we intend to get to become like, right? They don't spend the way we spend. They rely on credit a lot. I spoke about that earlier on. When they would throw a party, they throw a party for 20 people or 30 people, maximum 50 people. We throw parties for thousands of people. So in the same global economy that we have inherited from colonial powers, that is very restrictive and it's a zero-sum game. But I believe that Nigeria is getting better, even in terms of this corruption. And for what reason? I mentioned earlier that the government is not run by only the people in government. It is run by, including the opposition, the criticisms that come. We now live in a very open society. Everything is under scrutiny. The social media is active. Nigerians are the most active people on social media in the whole world. We can Google it. It used to be Philippines #1 and then Nigerians. But the last report I saw, which pertained to the 2025, I think, put Nigeria at the top of usage for the time that people spend on social media. And that itself is a force. But as a criticized government, also understand that people in government too will say, we are also entitled to look at the other side and say, okay, why are we like this? In order to solve the problem. Let us not criticize government just for criticizing sake or just because we are not in government. Let us criticize with a view to solving a problem. That is my position. I want to believe that the corruption is reducing. I also even want to say that we should be careful what we accept. Okay, we may not find these, irritating kind of corruption that happens in Nigeria, like those policemen collecting money from a Chinese person. We may not find it in abroad, but in many of those countries, we can see what's going on with Donald Trump and Doge. Whether you hate them or love them, they were able to see so many things, including ghost workers in America, in their thousands. They were able to see a lot of fraud in the system, including different kind of capers where they will release money from America, they will pass it through funny schemes, even including Nigeria, and then get the money back in America, and civil servants in America were becoming millionaires as a result. So please, the last thing I'll say is this: let us not accept it when anyone tries to put us down on the matter of corruption. We will evolve out of this in time. One of the things that will work is if governance continues to get better and the standard of living of our people improve. We are the best people in the world. We are not born corrupt, and there's nothing wrong with us, and we'll get out of this. Thank you.
Pastor Sonny.
Yeah, let's take a few more questions. Maybe Sonny is not quite there. Auntie MEC, you have a few questions, Professor Nika Grange and Olale Baba Shola. Let's hear those three questions, and then you tell us who you are directing your question, your comment on, and then the person can respond appropriately. Oh.
Thank you, Ms. Ransom Kuti here. Mr. Tope Fasua, good to see you again. Mr. Johnson Chukwu is on our side, so we won't be asking many questions. So everything will be from you. My real concern is that I don't see enough coordination between the federal, state, and local governments in the planning. We don't know which one is federal government project, which one is a state project, which was an LGA project. Is there any duplication of efforts? The Lagos Island, the Ministry of Urban Planning launched the Lagos Island Model City Plan recently. And the residents have been engaging with the relevant authorities. But we don't know which of these the areas of the plan that there will be intervention from the federal or the state. Why can't we have a master plan that integrates all the plans for all the states? That's what they have in Singapore. They have a model of what Singapore will look like in 30 to 40 years. And then that way, everyone will have an idea of where they can collaborate, what's happening, who's doing what. And year on year, every administration can then piggyback on that. And the last point to you is that whatever it is you are doing, you are not communicating and engaging with the citizens adequately. Even what you are doing well, you have to have a more robust way of ensuring that the citizens know what you're doing and there's a proper feedback system on a daily basis of engagement with them. Those are my 2 points and questions to you. Thank you, Pastor Itwa, again, for having us all together for this very impactful discourse with Mr. Johnson Chukwu is one of my favorite analysts. So I was really excited to know that he was going to come here and speak things the way they are. And that's something we must all learn. Wherever we are, whoever we engage with, in the church or the mosque, let us say what needs to be said and say it as boldly as possible. Thank you once again.
Thank you, my sis. Let's have Professor Nika Grange. Tope, please note those questions and we'll have you do a one-shot response to them. Professor Grange, please. And please, let's go straight to the point so that we can have a few more questions and not waste time.
Thank you very much, my pastor. Thank you. And thank you to the erudite speakers. To Dr. Fasua, I believe that part of what I'm going to ask has actually been asked by MS Ransom Kuti. The point about planning, it is very, very important. And it's usually based on availability of statistics. You did not mention anything about data gathering, storage, retrieval, and use of statistics. Nobody in the developed country will implement any project without having baseline statistics. And let me say that it is this lack of baseline statistics that gets us repeating the same statements about, oh, there has been lack of investment over decades. From when to when? If we had the statistics, we would be able to relate what we are talking about now to what has happened in the past. So this is a very, very weak area in planning in Nigeria. You also asked for innovations by students in groups. They are
Please kindly unmute, man. We can't hear you anymore.
Oh dear. Okay. Right. Okay. You need to communicate with them so that, publicly, not just telling a few people that they can innovate. I would
Sorry,
also,
can you repeat that point? We only heard up to where you started about innovation by students in group. I didn't get your issues with that.
my issue is that the students may be coming up with innovations, but they don't know how to communicate with those who are interested in this venture. So there has to be some form of bilateral communication between students and government. And as to scaling up, there have been so many things in various areas, so many pilot projects at state level, etc., which could not be scaled up. So something has to be done about integrating all these projects, as Ms. Ransom Kuti has said. Secondly, I believe that the issue with food security will never be solved without collaboration. Usually, or at least what we knew before, was that there are certain areas that are better for agriculture of certain products than other areas. Middle Belt, for example, we used to get our yams from there. The North, some wheat. Wheat, I believe, is grown in the North, but the corn that is grown in the South, I don't see any. I have not heard of any project that is making full use of the opportunity to grow corn in the South. Now, I'm saying this because the staple in places where corn grows very easily, like in South America, their staple is made from corn, not from wheat. And there are also in some places, staple is made from cassava, and even the snacks are from cassava, not from potatoes, which grow, but in limited quantities. So, we need to look more at our food technology, the food technological area, when we are talking of food production. Then I want to ask, why are we now having migration of cows? Cows used to be looked after in the north, and they were only brought down to the south for sale in those days. I cannot understand really why, all of a sudden they have found that it's better to have cows grazing in the south than in the north. Why not make the land in the north? Why not make it more conducive for cows to graze there? So I don't know. I believe somebody else may know about this, and let us have the facts. Finally, because I want to give others a chance. Finally, about the contribution of diaspora to development in Nigeria. When we talk about diaspora, everybody thinks of, okay, foreign people in diaspora. There are so many Nigerians in diaspora who are well equipped to bring back to their country the skills, the knowledge and skills which they have acquired in diaspora. And I think we need to start thinking of motivating them to come back to Nigeria. Recently, some doctors have come and they've set up what we will call even beyond tertiary care, quaternary care, specialist care. And they, they do well, but it's not, unfortunately, affordable by everybody. So, and we know that one of the causes of poverty is the out-of-pocket spending on healthcare. Out-of-pocket spending on healthcare. So we have to look at this area. How do we encourage these people who have come with specialist care to, to establish it well, so as to reduce the travel abroad for specialist care? Thank you. I think I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You've answered the question, so please, everybody else, keep your questions short. Sonia, are you on now? Do we ask Jumoke to please coordinate the Q&A?
Okay, no problem. I'm here, sir.
All right. Please, short questions, please, because we're running out of time, or we've run out of time.
Yeah. Okay. Do we want them to answer the questions that have been asked so far? I want to take more questions.
Maybe they should just answer these two, and then maybe we'll take another 3 or 4, and then we can.
I suggest we take. We are taking. I'm taking notes anyway, so.
Okay.
Maybe people
all right.
should
So
ask their questions and then we answer at once. Yes.
Okay. All right. Sonny, please.
Okay.
Short questions, please. We don't want long questions anymore, please.
Fashola Olalere will ask, and then Pastor Funke Awolowo. Allow Fashola to unmute Olalere. Yeah, go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks to Pastor Itua, to the guest as well. So it seems to be a congregation of the FCAs today. So I'm an FCA myself. Now, my question to Pastor Itua, thank you for having a platform like this, weekly looking at issues. So now our attention seems to be concentrated on the federal government. I'm wondering, what can we do to bring especially the states into question itself, how feasible it is? I know they are so dispersed, many of them, they are not accountable, even things they should do, they too cry on federal government to come and solve problems for them, especially if you look at the insecurity, killing so hundreds of people overnight, just like that. I believe that the state governments cannot claim to be neutral in that kind of things happening in their states. If they sit up like Lagos has done, they should have, there are things they can do. They give excuse that they don't control police, they don't control the army, but so Lagos does not. But Lagos has a framework in place that tries to tackle security from what the state government itself can do. So how can we hold the state government especially also accountable? Because as long as effort is focused only on federal government, we are limiting the potentials of capability to solve issues. So now, question to Dr. Fashola is that when I look at the issue of Nigeria, I want to ask you, because I need to go straight to the question, do you people in government sincerely believe that we have a population problem in this country? And is there any conscious effort to educate citizens that you don't just start bragging by having 32, 50, 40 children and knowing to make them realize that it has impact on the society and it can be a problem. So to take conscious efforts to address it. Those are my 2 questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Sonny is a bit lost again. Can we have Funke Awolowo ask a question, please? Funke Awolowo. Unmute yourself, Funke.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for that so much information. I just want to think, economically, and we're talking about specialization. Some people are saying the North, the food basket of the nation and all that. But I would say, like I learned in economics, that specialization necessitates exchange. That means that every state should be able to produce its own, and we exchange. And then this will bring, as we specialize, this will bring more technical, know-how into the system. For example, we've spoken about cocoa. I mentioned rubber, the rubber plantations, things that we have actually excelled in. But what's happened is that over the years, because of the oil, we abandoned them and we concentrated on the oil. And right now, these things, the agrarian side of the economy is suffering. What can we do to stimulate and bring back those things that will make us thrive, that made the nations, the Asian nations come to us to say, show us how to do these things. We have abandoned them, and this is making us suffer. Secondly, you mentioned the opposition. What I see that is happening with the opposition, because I belong to one of those parties, is that there's a copycat syndrome. Most of these parties, they're copying all the wrong things that is happening with the government of the day. And the things that we hear are scandalous. And really, there's no real checks and balances. What can we do to cleanse this mindset? We now take so mindset, no checks and balances in the system, and a government that literally gets away with everything or anything. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ma. Let me allow Dr. Tope and Mr. Chukwu to take a bite at those 4 questions, and then we'll come back and take the last 4. I will also advise that you just keep your responses very short and brief so that we can take another set of 4 and then we close soon. Thank you very much. So who wants to go first? Dr. Tope?
Yeah, okay, I'll speak very quickly so that Dr. Johnson can also speak. Dr. Ransom Kuti, MEC Ransom Kuti, spoke, well, basically not quite a question, but he made an observation about lack of coordination, maybe between states and federal. Well, there's a platform called the National Economic Council, which the Vice President heads. And in that platform, they bring all the states together. But mind you, because the states are also executive, they're in their own right. The governors are elected people, and they're powerful people. So you can only basically advise them and prod them in a certain direction. That's the federal system that we operate for now. And, so I believe that several ideas get shared and committees get set up which focus on specific issues with an idea to coordinate, outcomes at that level. However, of course, again, there's a lot that can be improved in terms of coordination between state and federal. One of the things I mentioned earlier was that, according to a report by the Punch, maybe on sometime last week, that even the law on minimum wage, about 20 states have not even started. And this puts a lot of stress. Imagine someone still earning 30,000 in this economy in a time like this with all the inflation that we have had to endure. And indeed, yes, I also admit that, especially on things like food, if you look at it year on year or 2 years down the line to now, some of the increases are astounding. So, your kind of platform, though, the platform that Pastor Ito had set up here, is also very, very instrumental to getting the right results and getting everybody to do the right thing. She also mentioned something about communication. That yes, in fact, the reason why I granted a few interviews recently, even though unfortunately a lot of our people can only deal with soundbite, maybe 1 minute, 30 seconds talk, which gets taken to wuthering heights and so on. But I think we must continue this, especially engaging, especially on economic issues beyond the politics. I think it's very important, and it's not going to be only me. Some other guys will also join me to send out this information and explain why we're where we are and what we intend to achieve. So that's taking on Dr. Mrs. Grange spoke about data gathering, of course. However, data is key. In fact, data is the new money. I've seen scenarios in this country where we seem not to understand the power of data, and sometimes we dump the data away, and those who understand data grab it, and before you know it, you're contacting them to get information and data about your own country. So yes, we could do a lot more. Apart from the Bureau for Statistics, I see a few organizations who are private sector, and of course, perhaps they can do a better job. They started to do a lot in this regard. People like ProShare, like Nairametrics, and a few others have started to Data Pro, I think, as well. So I think that, of course, one of the ways to do well in terms of data and information is to be able to triangulate information by getting several sources that point in one direction. So beyond MBS, which has its own challenges, we're getting this private sector entities who can also supply us with data as required. And yes, you mentioned about the innovation by students in groups. There's one thing I wanted to reference at this point, because indeed what I'm interested in is my idea, which I proposed in a few places. We're not contending whether the students can be innovative. I'm contending whether we can make the work of students, especially at polytechnic and universities, to be immediately relevant to their environment. So rather than say that, a student should go and write some very fantastic project on perhaps on nuclear science or something, which we probably will dump in the waste paper basket 2 years down the line. Why don't we get them to embark on practical projects like building a small road, being mentored by the big companies that want the big contract, and in mentoring them, we would have a scenario where the Chinese company that were giving the contract, a big contract, will not go and bring people from their country, sometimes from their countryside, and then bring them here to do the work. Sometimes they import even the messenger, they import everybody, and they say our people are young boys and girls have no experience. In this way, if we undertake this project, we are going to need, of course, the cooperation of the academia, the NUC, the body that also coordinates the polytechnics and all of those, to get on board and realize that this is a new day. And in fact, recently I was reading something about the Works Progress Administration under Roosevelt, and it was in the Great Depression. And sometimes I want to say that, look, we would do well to also, go back and take some of the policies that Americans and Britons and Chinese and did that they had when they were way back. Sometimes we want to think, start to act as if we are at the same level as those countries. No. In the Great Depression, there was this WPA called the Works Progress Administration, which actually focused on getting youth and mobilizing them en masse to do work, put money in their pocket. But do you know what? The agency's construction projects produced more than 650,000 miles of road, 125,000 public buildings, 75,000 bridges, 8,000 parks, and 800 airports were built in that era. So Americans may not talk about that. You may talk about, the market system and all of that now. perhaps the reason why they're under a lot of pressure and running to catch up with China and what have you now. But this was a time that a major part of the infrastructure that still exists in America today was built, and it was actually built out of that mass mobilization and understanding that the youth energy must be used appropriately. You pay them for what they do. Okay, it's not to be done for free, but it is projects that will be relevant. Small roads, electricity projects, agricultural projects, and so on. You know, in different direction entirely. So, you mentioned we have had value. So essentially,
Tope, sorry, just a
I'll run
minute.
very quickly. Yes.
You speak a lot as if you are still outside of government. So all these things you are talking about now and that we should do. You are now at least you advise government.
Which
Have
yeah,
you
they've been
put forward this advice?
Absolutely.
So
whether they'll be
been
taking, there are so many
accepted?
forces. I'm just an advisor. You understand? Whether they'll be taking about, look, let me tell you, not only have I put them in officially, but also I'm saying it so that it could get some traction. And I'm telling you that the kind of things that are possible under this government going forward. Okay, so they've been done.
Is the kind of things that you want. So for me,
yeah, my own idea.
Sorry. Let me just get in a question. I know that the government has many advisors at different levels, and depends on who gets the ear of the president that gets things done. And so you have all these fantastic ideas, great, and you are propounding them, and you have been for a very long time, even before you entered government. And we have seen people that had great ideas. They went into government, spent 8 years, came out, nothing changed.
Sometimes all you need is one. All you need is one idea sometimes. Sometimes you have to push it from different angles, but all you need is just one idea. So, but I'm just telling you the kind of things that are possible.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. I just thought to put that in.
Okay. So very quickly, Mrs. Grange also mentioned staple form. Yes, that's a bit of this thing. Some of these foods, like wheat, was introduced into Nigeria. And of course, for those who understand this, there's a certain Professor Kaboub Fadil, I think is a Tunisian, has spoken a lot about food sovereignty and the history of what happened in the 1950s into the 70s, when the colonial powers decided to go and do something about their own agriculture, and they maintained their own food sovereignty and left us in the lurch. But again, that's the benefit of history, so that we can know why we're where we are and what we need to do going forward. So, so all of those things. In fact, the maize, a lot of maize is grown, perhaps more in the north actually, and they found their staple from corn in the north. A lot of their staple, their tuwo and all of that, come from north. But a lot has changed also. Rice has made its incursion into Nigeria. We eat more rice now than most other things. So well, it's a matter of sociology that there's that evolution that happens. Sometimes we can't even fight those forces anymore. But in terms of grazing, of course, that's the reason why Mr. President created the grazing ministry, to try and align some of those things and reduce the number of clashes and animals eating people's food and all of that in society, rearing cows on the main road and all of that. Hopefully the ministry will kick into action and we'll see results. Lastly, you mentioned diaspora returnees. Luckily, and I've told a few people, we've seen doctors who returned to Nigeria. And just a few days ago, I was discussing on another platform, and we noticed that a lot of Nigerians who live abroad now come to Nigeria for their dental work, for even for IVFs, a lot of them. Contrary to what people say, Nigeria is finished, Nigeria is this, we still have a lot of good people, doctors who are still working, fantastic doctors, achieving results. There's so many of them. So many times I always get to be riled up when people try to put everything down about Nigeria. So people are living from abroad to come and do their medical. Of course, it's much cheaper in terms of dollars and pounds, but they get very good results. A lot of IVF cases get done very well here. And I believe that those who benefit are grateful for that. So those skills are returning. Mr. Fashola said population. Now, just one question, population problem. First thing I want to say, number one, I personally, I can't speak for anybody, but as the special advisor on the economy, I don't believe we have a population problem. I believe that population can be an asset. When China got tired of driving exports, they focused on their domestic economy. Population can be a very important strength. And as a matter of fact, the other day I had a discussion on another platform, and somebody posted a graph that showed that Nigeria population actually is the population growth rate for Nigeria, not the population itself. The growth rate of population for Nigeria is declining and fast. You will not see so many women that have 20 children anymore. That means that the education over time, the education on child spacing, and of course for women not to allow themselves to be used and their body to be used as a factory, are sunken, even in the north of Nigeria. Most of my friends who are from the north of Nigeria have just one wife. In fact, it becomes a bit of a novelty sometimes among my generation and those who are younger for them to have second wife. Of course, the wife, the modern wife will hardly accept it. She will fight back. So it's not like in those days where people have 20 wives, 15 wives and have so many children when they don't have anything to feed them with. So our population too may see in the medium to long term, we too may have to start facing issues of declining population like they have in Japan. So, however, if we could educate a lot of our children that are out of school, then we would actually get, the benefit of that population. So, lastly, Mrs. Pastor Funke Awolowo mentioned specialization necessitates changes. The states should specialize. It is good. One thing I want to quickly point out, as against David Ricardo, who propounded the idea of competitive and comparative advantage in the year 1820, which is 205 years ago. There's a new thinking around what countries as a whole should do. We have observed countries that have specialized on what they produce and exported all of those produces around the world, but they never changed or never emerged from the economic morass. A country like Argentina is a case in point. Argentina was one of the most important economies and one of the biggest economies at the turn of the 20th century, 1900. But you see, Argentina made the mistake of consolidating on that because they were basically an agricultural economy. And they could feed themselves, they could export to the world. So therefore, they never caught on to the innovation that came with the other innovations around technology, around industrialization, around the internet and all the other innovations. They can only play catch up now because they decided to consolidate and share the wealth. So the average Argentinian became very entitled to say, you know what, because I'm an Argentinian, I must be well fed, I must get my benefits from society, and everybody went to sleep. So the new thinking is that every country that wants to really make progress must develop new capabilities, must also ensure that it adds value to the product that it produces. And that also probably means that we must not be gaslighted by trade, because if we're looking at trade alone, what do we have to sell? The same, primary product. So, but that said, we take on your suggestions. We are aware of the oil costs. We are aware of the need to stimulate our Greek and do a whole lot more, not only in terms of adding value, but even in producing a lot more using the best technologies around. You mentioned winner takes all mindset in opposition. Well, again, Nigerians are Nigerians, but I also believe that over time, I believe that Nigerians are changing for the better. I believe that we are also putting ourselves under pressure. I believe also that, self-criticism. Nigeria are some of the most self-critical peoples, even though sometimes it sounds as if we like to criticize the other person, maybe those in government, but Nigerians are also very self-critical, and self-criticism is one of the biggest virtues or the best virtues that people can have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chukwu, are you still there, sir?
Yes,
So sorry. Okay, go ahead. Oh, so sad. Is it just me or can anybody hear him? Hello? Is it me or is it system? Okay, maybe your connection is not, we can't hear you at all. All right, maybe we'll just try and take 2 or 3 more questions before we wrap up, because it's already time. It's 7 o'clock, and I know that maybe what we have will just be comment. Mr. Johnson, we can't hear you. Dr. Fakponda, maybe if you just make your comments very brief. Charles Obi, Lodel Phone, Kazim, Bello, Maurice, Shagun, we may not be able to take everybody. Just very briefly, 30 seconds for everybody, if there are comments, so that we can just run through and complete this session. Thank you very much. Dr. Fakponda, please unmute yourself. Allow Dr. Fakponda to unmute. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. My friend Tukurua Fashola is only to take message back, because as he himself said, he's an advisor. The government is serving is not organically popular in Nigeria. That's a fact. And Tope should know that there is life after government. We have been together in Abuja since the early 90s, so we are going to meet when you leave government. Grace of God. First question. During the Buhari era, the security services were headed by Fulanis, were complaining. Now, Egbetokun IG is Yoruba. Chief of Army Staff is Yoruba. Chief of Defense Staff, Musa, is Middle Belt. How come 3 of them cannot sweep out all these so-called headers? What is the problem? Help us find out. I'm wondering why they cannot sweep out. They went to ECOMOG in Liberia. They went to Sierra Leone, Nigerian Armed Forces. They restored order in those countries. What is the problem between 3 of them who are heading the security services now? It's disgraceful. Seriously speaking. Why are they wearing uniform if they cannot perform? Number 2, pass it down. The government said they would do unnecessary report in 12 weeks last year. We've not heard anything about it. The federal government is bloated, wasteful, no action. Number 3, I've been in government service. When there's a jumbo contract, 16 trillion, Lagos to Calabar, it's big money, big whatever. Why not do shipping line from Badagry to Calabar? Look, how long is Mediterranean Sea where we go for cruise? Why can't we go cruise from Calabar? I mean, from Calabar to Badagry and back. So then we do excursions. The ocean is our own. What is blue economy when you cannot even use the ocean that is so free? I don't understand what you are talking about, blue economy. We are not even taking the fishes. The Portuguese are mining the fish in the ocean. But we are now saying, oh, expressway from Lagos to Calabar at 16 trillion naira. Look, government just, I mean, I don't know. I'm disappointed, to be honest. Finally, Tope, you said 5,500 megawatts. Okay, what is the timeline for 10,000? What is the timeline for 20,000? Are we stuck in 5,000 in perpetuity? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I will take the last question, Charles Obi. I'll have to apologize to all the other people. We're very sorry. We are really, really up on time, and maybe we can engage further. Obi, Charles, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Fasua, good to hear you speak.
I'm sorry, the others, please. We're really up on time. Go ahead, Charles. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, when you ran for president in 2019, you had said that people like you couldn't become a president of Nigeria. However, you've had a chance now to work very close to Aso Rock. I'm wondering if you still have that view, because at that time, a lot of the young people in Nigeria had hope in people like you, the Mogalus of the world, the Durotoyes of the world, and Showore. So I wonder if you still have that view. Number one. Number two, real quick, you as the economic advisor, you know that it's very difficult for a lot of our agrarian people, a lot of our farmers to go to their farms to produce because of insecurity, because of terrorists. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, how you can have a stable economy when the people who are supposed to be responsible for producing some of the crops that we eat don't feel safe going to their farms because of insecurity, which also translates to investors may not have the incentive to want to come and participate in our economy. So I'll be curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Tope, go ahead and respond to those two questions. And
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Pastor Sonny. Very first, Mr. Dr. Faponda spoke about our Ansari report. Yes, the government did say that there was some work to be done. Well, I can't answer every question. Some of his questions I would have to parry and move on. But the thing about the Ansari report is that at the time it was done, there were only 521 parastatals around. Today, when I spoke to one of the members of the House of Reps, who are the ones that usually approve new parastatals, and it's as if each one parastatal comes with every law, which has slowed down now in this regime and this administration. I think we have about 1,100 now. So the thing with the Oronsai report is that it needs to be, the report needs to be redone. And the report, of course, even ab initio, was not perfect. I've worked with the Bureau for Public Sector Reform on that report before I even joined government. I know the report is far from perfect. For example, the emphasis on data, the report probably believed that we should de-escalate the Bureau for Statistics, which I actually disagree with in the committee where we were, because we need more data from every. In fact, the UK's Office for Data has about 3,500 people working there on a 60 million population in a country where they are very much used to giving information to government. Then, sir, you spoke about insecurity, which I'll take alongside Mr. Obi, also spoke about insecurity. And the only thing I wanted to do was, I'm not a security officer, but I'm an economist, writer sometimes. I just try to plan this idea that Nigeria must be special to have been targeted by insecurity. Nigeria must be special. And so we should understand that we are special. That's the reason why we're targeted. And it's as if there's forces that say, look, these people must not rest. Because if they rest, they'll probably get their acts right. If they get their acts right, they'll be even greater than they are right now. Because otherwise, why would all leave all of those countries and come and keep attacking us here, including those who go as far as southwest, southeast to be killing people inside the villages and so on. In fact, we should just follow patterns. Now we're back to Jos again. In the Obasanjo time, the problem was in Jos. In the Yar'Adua time, the problem was in Niger Delta. In the Jonathan time, it came back to the northeast. In Buhari's time, it went back to the southwest and southeast. Now, Tinubu's time, it's back in the middle belt with skirmishes in the southwest, given the fact that the government, the security had improved. Indeed, it had improved at some point when we could say that, in the northwest, we were hearing less of bandits. In the northeast, we had stopped hearing about Boko Haram forever. I hope they don't come back. That was one of the most traumatic moments for Nigeria. Nigeria was listed as the 4th most unsafe country in that era when we had bombs exploding everywhere. But today, when I look at the insecurity index, we were down to number 14, thankfully. but there's still a lot of work to be done, and no life must be lost unjustly. But I think there are forces that are stronger than us behind some of those things. Or maybe it's political, I don't know. I'm not a security expert. So the blue economy, sir, is actually also about fishing. In fact, the blue economy, first of all, is about fishing. Perhaps I still believe there's nothing too wrong about the coastal road if it's going to open up all of our coast. Beyond fishing, the tourism that you could get is amazing. I mentioned Morocco. I've been there just once, and I've seen what they've been able to do in Morocco with their beaches and all of that. And open up. Look at Ondo State. Araromi probably has the biggest beach in Nigeria. That's where I'm from, in Ondo State. I'm from Akure in Ondo State. But, that beach, nobody even goes there. So there's a lot. If we could open that place up, have a few hotels, people will go there, spend money. The GDP of Ondo State itself will improve. And this road that's passing through there is going to be a big incentive, because the road doesn't just go straight. There's going to be turnings of the road and all of that. Then, sir, you mentioned 10,000. Yes, according to the Minister of Power, and he just did whatever today. I'm trying to see whether I can dump his interview on the comment section so that people can look at this themselves. Somebody is speaking. Please. Hello. I'm trying to see if I can dump his interview so that people can look at it. You'll be able to have a very comprehensive position from Bayo Adelabu himself regarding what he intends to do. But the last time we discussed, he actually said that we are looking at 10,000 in the next 2 years. That's what he said, So hopefully we'll be able to reach that. According to him, they have added about 5,000. Okay, yes, I've got the link now. So for everybody, I'm going to drop the link of Bayo's discussion on, the minister discussion. He's just my friend. So as I say Bayo, but he's the minister, it's my senior in government. So let me try and dump this. Just the link, so for anyone to pick up. So hopefully we'll be able to get to 10,000 in 2 years. There's actually no big deal in this thing. I just think that we need to help ourselves, and I think we need a different approach, different from going to call Siemens to come and help us, or General Electric to come and help us, different from dumping electricity on the national grid and expecting it to percolate down. There are places in the riverine areas of Ondo State that I'm from that haven't seen light flash like this in the last 10 years. And that is where the crude oil in Ondo State is found. Why would they not protest? So you said you see me after government. Honestly speaking, I'm not afraid of being seen. It's not a do or die affair. I don't intend to have a huge career in government. I want to do, if it's this 4 years, I can do, or whatever number they give me, and go back to being a citizen. But I'm a Nigerian, and I love this country. I believe that this country can work. I believe that our diversity is indeed our, what's it called? I believe that our diversity is our biggest strength. Mr. Charles, I ran in 2019, indeed, yes. Well, I think running is too expensive, chiefly because of the way we are. Is our people. Look, where will we find money to give to agents that will stay in 189,000 polling booths all around the country? So you need that huge structure. You have to pay them money. They will not go there just because they love you, right? 189,000, okay? And then you see a scenario where, that's the process is actually highly monetized. So only the big parties can run this show. And you know what? Let's not put ourselves down. It will also get better, because the American system, I studied the history. They were also very much, very much corrupt when they started. The presidential system is very expensive and oftentimes corrupt. In some parts of America, in the Rust Belt, they would actually stand by the door on voting day and hand out cigarettes, sometimes money, sometimes pork or bacon for you to vote for their party. But they've evolved over time, even though there are still problems in different places. In the UK, the same thing. If we went to Tower Hamlets in London, the corruption there is, especially on election day, is something else. I think that we shouldn't write ourselves up. I think that we can get there. So I think that yes, it's too expensive. Even the independent candidate sure thing cannot work at that level. You need a whole lot of money to be able to run it at that level. I mentioned the issue of insecurity. I think that the insecurity in Nigeria is orchestrated. That's what my sixth sense tells me. By who, I don't know. But I hope that one day they will leave us alone and allow us to breathe. People still talk about ISWAP and all of those things. I mean, look, what's Nigeria's business with all of those things, really? But we're not this way. We never were this way. We're loving people. We're positive people. And I think that we're going to get our mojo back someday soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, for your time with us on the platform today. I think this conversation will continue, and we can never stop holding government to account because we want better governance. Like Mr. Johnson said, we don't need any economist to tell us that our life has, the quality of our life has decreased since May 29, 2023. I keep asking those in government because when Bola Tinubu and all the others were campaigning, they told us Buhari had messed up and they promised to make our life better. So that means if you take May 29, 2023 as a baseline, our life was bad as it were then. But from that day forward, our life have gotten worse. And they say we must suffer some pain before it gets better. The question I ask is, when will it get better? Can you give us a date? And what will better look like? Will better be better than where I was in May 2023? Or will it just be a marginal decrease from this high level of suffering that you have taken me to say it is better? I think that is a question that government needs to answer and clear for us. But, I want to thank you very much, Dr. Tope, for trying to tell us what government is doing. Even though many people feel what government is doing in their pockets and in their bank accounts. Mr. Johnson, we also thank you for throwing some love. Was I off and on? Okay. So we really thank all those that have participated. Yeah. So finally, on behalf of Pastor Etwa is still here. Pastor Etwa. Sorry, I didn't know you were around, sir. Allow Pastor Etwa to unmute. Pastor Etwa, are you still here? Okay. Maybe he's gotten engaged. But, on behalf of Pastor Etwa and the African Leadership Forum, the African Leadership Group, our NLS series, I want to thank everyone that has taken time to be part of this program today. I do hope you've gotten some more information on what government is doing. To those that couldn't ask their questions, we are really, really sorry. As you can see, time is really gone. But maybe I can get Tope alone sometime next time, and we'll have this conversation again. Tope, thank you very much. Johnson Tuku, thank you again. And thank you, everyone. Have a very good evening and enjoy the rest of the week. God bless you.
Allow us to unmute. Yeah, it's good to check the chat sometimes. He talked about medical people coming to Nigeria for surgery. They're coming to harvest organs, and organ harvesting has taken over kidnapping. So you have less kidnapping, now you have organ harvesting. Innocent people are being killed. They take their organs, and I'm sure medical people are involved because they have to keep the organs fresh and alive for it to be useful. Well, so we should look into that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then another thing is, it's a bit cheaper also here. Because, I mean, if you want to do your dental stuff, in Nigeria...
Pastor Sonny, you are not hearing what the lady said.
I heard what she said. She spoke about organ harvesting.
Few people are doing dental. Few are doing dental. They are doing more of organ harvesting. It's cheaper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
They are killing many people. So kidnapping has reduced. It's easier and cheaper for them to kill people, take their organs. And it's medical people are involved. It's a big thing.
So this thing now, how do we get, because unless these things are reported, right?
Exactly.
How do we track it? How do we know? Professor Grange, you're in the medical field.
Yes, well,
this has nothing to do with medical field. This is purely an issue of poor governance. There's no government. People Chinese drive into our country, insult our dignity. Is because there's no government.
Apart from
Just
that,
imagine, yes, and people drive in, kill our people, take their organs because there's no government. So it's not a medical, you don't need Professor Grange, I'm a medical professor too. You don't need Professor Grange medical professorship to settle that issue. Professor Grange, I'm not denigrating our medical profession in any way. I'm basically saying, yes, you can share your view, but
that's what I was going to say, that if whoever is involved,
everything to do with lack of governance. We are just very sick as a country, and we should focus on the irresponsibility of our political processes and our political operators. It's just too disgusting. Thank you. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel about that country. And we are not pulling it down. We are the ones who are concerned about it.
Pastor Sonny, I think my name is Charles Ekandem.
Okay.
I think, like I mentioned before, what we should do in this regard, there are a lot of unemployed youths and graduates. So if African Leadership Group, being a known platform with huge network, can collaborate with private security and then train some people who can be in the area of security services, and then the African Leadership Group can get support or approach organizations like, okay, this is what we are doing. We are trying to create jobs and also for security measures against organ harvesting. They will be able to sponsor as part of corporate social responsibility. Delta Airline is making so much money from Nigerian route. Nigerian route is the highest, that generates the highest revenue for Delta Air. Coca-Cola is making so much money from Nigeria. They have Coca-Cola Foundation. So MTN is there, where government could say, okay, African Leadership Group can use their network and discuss with the federal governments, okay, this is what we want to do, like a private-public partnership with less government interference. We want to train some youths, put them back to in social sector from security to and all that. And then MTN Foundation or MTN can sponsor this program as with tax, either for tax breaks or under corporate social responsibility. So I wouldn't mind working with you offline to see how we can package something, and then with few like minds to in the area of this regard. Thank you.
Please, also, how do we stop the young ladies who are selling their eggs for money? Young ladies now sell their eggs for money. It's terrible what is going on.
Because of lack of job. Most jobs, if you don't have any person in the system. Yes, most jobs.
It's also indiscipline, because there's nobody that is sane as discipline that will go and have an operation, have your eggs removed for money.
I think you are wrong. There's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yes. If you push a human being to the bottom level of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they will do all sorts of things. You are not at that level. And so you probably cannot relate to them. That's why you are speaking the way you are doing now. If you find yourself in the state of abject poverty, as these people who are doing this,
you will do anything.
You will do the same thing.
You do anything.
You will sell your egg because it doesn't remove much from you. You will sell it.
Sell their children.
If that's what gives you your next meal.
Some of them, the responsibility from parents is overwhelming. They're doing everything to survive. It takes few not to do what. So the idea I'm proposing is that Pastor Sonny, let's put up something. We have talked. Let's move. The next phase will be action. What program can we initiate that will create jobs and also help in the area of security measures? I've seen what the mayor of Newark is doing here. He came in he saw a lot of gaps and issues within the Black community. He decided to use a non-profit organizations to do a lot of things, the city of Newark, from housing to security to environment. So we can also do same. Say, government, look, yes, African Leadership Group is a non-profit organization, but we are willing to form a private partnership. But this program will be executed by African Leadership Group with other NGOs, with less government interference. Government, we are thinking that you should endorse this project. We will talk to our contacts like in MTN, ATL, and the rest of them. Government has endorsed this project. We want you to sponsor training of youths on so with security. Like in China, they are training their children on karate, self-defense, and all that, along with the educational skills. And they will create jobs. This will help to mitigate some of the issues we are facing, we are talking about.
Can I allude to what's happening in Lagos State?
All right. Charles Ekanem, we'll talk after this.
Even though there's a level of security in Lagos State, we have the issues of the area boys and